Alright, time to do another musical theater video essay, and hopefully this one doesn't get copyright blocked like the last one did. If you don't know what I'm talking about, a few weeks ago I made a 40-minute long video essay on the In the Heights movie, which was blocked from viewing because Warner Brothers got super greedy like every other multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate. It's funny how greedy these companies can get, considering back in 2016, Warner Brothers filed a copyright claim against their own website, which is the funniest thing I've ever heard. But I don't think Warner Brothers has anything to do with this video, so I'm safe. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, so I have to say a few things before I start the video. If you want to watch that In the Heights video essay, it's up for free on Patreon, so I'll link that down below. Also, please do not subscribe to that Patreon. I am 100% not ready to release a Patreon yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. Another thing, I'm an actor. I know, crazy, right? But what this means is if I ever talk shit on a musical or a play, I risk losing future jobs in live theater. This might confuse some non-actors, but think of it this way. If I shit talk a director or a writer, they're not gonna want to work with me because, well, I talk shit on them. So if I say bad things about a show, if a director or a playwright or a composer sees the things I've said, they might not cast me, which sucks when it comes to criticism. That being said, I am a very opinionated person. I mean, obviously, I'm a YouTuber after all, so if I don't like something, I'll probably tell you I don't like it. That being said, I will 100% walk back anything I've said about theater if it means me getting a job. The Phantom of the Opera movie that I've often talked about my disdain for, that is now my favorite movie of all time. Please hire me. My final point before we start is that a lot of people hate, and I mean hate, musical theater. If you're one of these people, I ask you to give it another chance. Yes, it can be very, very cringy at times, but I just have to ask you, what art form doesn't have cringe in it? Anyway, enough of that garbage, because this video is about As a musical theater actor and a writer, I often watch a movie or read a book and imagine how they would or could be adapted into a musical. A lot of times, they're laughable ideas. Take, for example, The Sopranos. I just finished watching The Sopranos for the first time, and thinking about a musical adaptation of it makes me piss myself. I would 100% watch the fuck out of that adaptation, but I would also 100% know it would be dog shit. On the other hand, one of my favorite movies, Disney's The Haunted Mansion, would make an amazing stage musical. Yeah, I understand how loaded that last sentence was, and I promise I will explain what I mean in another video. As new as adapting movies into musicals sounds, it's been happening for decades. One of my favorite musicals, A Little Night Music, premiered on Broadway in 1973 and is based on a Swedish film from 1955 called Smiles of a Summer Night. That's right, one of Stephen Sondheim's classic original shows isn't actually original at all and is even based on a film. Suck it, musical theater purists! There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of movies that have been adapted for the stage. To be fair, there have just been a lot of adaptations, period. They can be of movies, books, and even paintings. I would even make the argument that most musicals are adaptations of something else. But the one type of adaptation that seems to get the most publicity are the adaptations of movies. This makes sense considering that movies have the most widespread appreciation out of any art form. Movies have such a cultural significance because they are very easily obtainable glimpses into other people's lives, even if those people just happen to be fictional. We view original films as the definitive version of that story, so telling someone you prefer a different adaptation of that movie would be like telling someone you think the movie is better than the book. But that begs the question, why? If one art form told the story better than the original, why do we pretend the original is still better? Why do I have to hold my breath when I tell people I think most of the Harry Potter movies are better than the books? When it comes to what types of movies get adapted, it seems like nothing is off limits. You have your obvious options like Disney cartoons with Beauty and the Beast or The Lion King, as well as old movie musicals like 42nd Street or White Christmas. While those are the most obvious and most quote-unquote acceptable adaptations, there are a ton of other types of genres of movies that get adapted. The quick answer is any type of movie can and will be made into a musical. There are obvious trends, which I'll talk about in a minute, but like, if you wanted to see a sports movie turn into a musical, we've got Bend It Like Beckham, Bring It On, and Rocky. Fucking Rocky. Now, I do want to get something out of the way. There are a ton of musicals that are based on books that had movie adaptations before they were made into musicals. This creates kind of a weird situation where people think these musicals are based on the movies and not the books. Examples of this are Les Mis, Phantom of the Opera, American Psycho, Bridges of Madison County, and a ton of others. These aren't the type of musicals I'm talking about. Cult classic movies are prime real estate for the musical treatment. The movies aren't mainstream, but they're still a diehard fan base that could definitely get behind a reimagining of the movie they have such a passion and love for. Heathers is a perfect example of this. Now, before I talk a little bit about Heathers, I just have to say this. I don't like it. I know. Kill me now. I think the music is good. I think the book is funny, but there's just something about the lyrics that bugs me to no extent. I like the original movie quite a bit. Maybe it's because I haven't seen a live production of Heathers and I haven't had the full experience. That's valid and all, but from what I've seen, it's just not my cup of tea. That being said, I 100% understand why this musical works as an adaptation. You want a musical based on the John Cusack movie High Fidelity from 2000? Boom! You got it. How about a musical adaptation of the 1982 black comedy Eating Raoul? Damn right there's one that exists. But I know what you really want. You want the 1956 sci-fi classic Forbidden Planet to be put on stage with fun little show tunes. Well, do I have good news for you. A lot of dramas get adapted too. These are always much less interesting than most of the other ones. Now, I'm not saying they're bad. I actually like a lot of them, and I think that drama is one of the easiest genres to turn into musicals. Some adapted dramas are Ghost, Finding Neverland, The Color Purple, Billy Elliot, Far From Heaven, The Bodyguard, and Urban Cowboy. There are some genres that get adapted every once in a while, but don't seem to have as many options as the others. Christmas movies are a good example, with the two notable ones being Elf and A Christmas Story. Foreign movies seem to be gaining an audience as well, with musicals like The Band's Visit and Once finding fairly recent success, with both winning Best Musical at the Tony Awards in their respective years. Non-Disney children's cartoons also have a few adaptations like Shrek the Musical, Anastasia, and SpongeBob. Yes, I know that the SpongeBob musical isn't based off of any of the SpongeBob movies, but I really like it and I just wanted to mention it here, so if you have a problem with that, you could suck my fat cup. Ooh, here's a fun one. There's even a musical based on the 1970s porn called Debbie Does Dallas. Now, the big movie genre that will not stop being adapted into musicals, no matter how much we beg and we plead, are comedies. There is such a long list of movie comedies that have been turned into musicals that you'd probably like one of the ones that are on this list. And if you don't, well, that probably means you hate laughing, and I hate you. Okay, hold your breath because there are a lot. We have 9 to 5, Back to the Future, Beetlejuice, Big Fish, Catch Me If You Can, Clueless, Crybaby, Freaky Friday, The Full Monty, Groundhog Day, Grumpy Old Men, Hairspray, Honeymoon in Vegas, Kinky Boots, Legally Blonde, Mean Girls, Mrs. Doubtfire, Pretty Woman, The Producers, School of Rock, Sister Act, Spamalot, which is based on Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Thoroughly Modern Millie, Tootsie, Victor Victoria, Waitress, and The Wedding Singer. Holy shit, that's a lot of movies, and I probably missed some. Now that I've named all of these movies that have been adapted into musicals, you're definitely wondering, okay, so that's a pretty loaded question. I would say some of them definitely are, but most of them aren't. When it comes to adapting anything, I think that there are 3 questions that need to be asked. 1, does this need an adaptation? 2, what will you add to make the story better or more accessible? And 3, do people care? If you answer those questions with money, and I don't care, you're probably gonna make a shit musical. There has to be a certain love for the source material, but also a willingness to adapt and change things. A lot of writers would probably just love a big fat paycheck, so they'll write anything, even if it sucks. Those are the people that I refer to as utter scum and my mortal enemies. But if you set out to adapt something with love for what is being adapted, it might just turn out great. I think the best way to understand what I'm talking about is to compare 2 different musicals that have been adapted from movies. One good adaptation and one bad. Now, this segment is going to be very heavily opinion-based. You might hate the show I love. You might love the show I hate. And is that okay? Definitely not. You need to get better taste. The 2 musicals I decided to take a look at are Legally Blonde, which is one of my favorite musicals of all time, and Mean Girls, which I hate as an adaptation. When we look at these, I'll be answering the 3 questions I posed a few paragraphs ago. Don't know why I use the term paragraphs, you can't see my paper. Let's start with Legally Blonde. The first question, why does this need an adaptation, is kind of hard to answer, but I'll do the best I can. Legally Blonde needed a musical adaptation for a few reasons. The plot is perfect for the stage, it has a great ensemble cast, and Elle Woods is quite literally a character who needs to be on a stage. Now the second question, what will you add to make the story better or more accessible, is a lot easier to answer now that the musical has been out for over 10 years. The real answer is the music. There's something about the music in Legally Blonde that just makes the show one of the most fun musicals ever made. They took classic moments from the movie like the bend and snap and turned them into songs that have changed the way we think of these moments. I actually find it upsetting when I go back and watch the original movie and the song Bend and Snap doesn't happen. It rips my soul apart. The final question is, do people care? And I don't think you understand how much people actually cared when this musical came out. The original movie came out in 2001, and the musical came out in 2007. That's a pretty decent-sized time gap. It's not right after the movie came out, but it's also close enough to the movie's release to get people really excited. If you were entering high school in 2001 as a freshman, the Legally Blonde musical would have come out while you were a sophomore in college. If you liked the original movie, you were probably really excited for this musical. People were so excited, in fact, that they filmed the musical live on stage and aired it on MTV while the show was still doing performances on Broadway. The only other show that I can think of that released a pro-shot recording while the show was still playing on Broadway is Hamilton. And that didn't come out until Broadway theaters were shut down because of a fucking pandemic. If that doesn't show how much demand there was for a Legally Blonde musical, I don't know what will. The next year, in 2008, MTV aired a reality show trying to find the next person to play Elle Woods on Broadway, and I personally remember the show being as big as the one they did for Glee, and I was 8 when that show came out. I personally think that the Legally Blonde musical is leagues better than the movie, and if you haven't seen it, the full MTV recording is on YouTube, so I'm gonna link that in the description for you. Now we move on to Mean Girls the Musical. Why does this need an adaptation? It doesn't. Unlike Legally Blonde, the movie version of Mean Girls is, in my opinion, a masterpiece in filmmaking, so trying to adapt it to any other art form is destined to fail to live up to the movie in quality. Sadly, I think the real answer to the first question when it comes to Mean Girls is money. That brings me to the second question. What will you add to make the story better or more accessible? And again, they didn't add anything, really. Sure, some of the music is pretty good, like World Burn and I'd Rather Be Me, but the rest of it just kind of falls flat, especially Where Do You Belong? God, don't even get me started on that song. Mean Girls doesn't feel like a story that needs to be told in a musical form, and Katie Heron isn't interesting enough of a character to base a whole musical around. Yeah, I know the musical is more about Regina and Janice and Damien, but why would I want to watch a musical where the main character is really just a side character? Yeah, Tina Fey also wrote the book for this musical, which is fine, but nowhere even as close to as good as her script for the movie. Sadly, I think the answer to the second question is also money. Which brings me to the last question. Do people care? And I guess they do, but also the hype isn't so much for the musical as it is for the novelty of seeing one of your favorite movies in a different way. The original movie came out in 2004, and the musical premiered on Broadway in 2018. That's 14 years after the original movie. If you started your freshman year of high school when this movie came out, you would be fully graduated college and maybe even have a family by the time this musical came out. And that's my biggest problem with a lot of these movie to musical adaptations. They rely solely on nostalgia to get butts in seats, something that Legally Blonde didn't really do. I don't think 6 years is enough time to create nostalgia for a movie. For example, let's look at a movie that could 100% make a good musical. The Hateful Eight. That movie came out in 2015, which is 6 years before 2021, which is when I'm filming this video. I don't think there is any nostalgia for that movie yet. It still feels new. This is a reason why I like the musical Waitress a lot. It doesn't bank on a well-known movie, and it didn't wait a long time after the movie came out to make it a musical. I love Waitress for all of the same reasons I love Legally Blonde, but sadly, when it comes to Mean Girls, I don't think they cared and they only did it for the money. So are all musicals based on movies good? No, not at all. Do all movies make good musicals? No, and frankly, I would ask you to see a doctor if you really believed that. Should we be turning movies into musicals at all? Well, I don't see why not, as long as you're going to improve the story and you're doing it out of love. But if you're doing it just for a cash grab, I think that's kind of shitty. Actually, if you want to get into writing musicals, a good exercise is to take a movie you like and try to adapt it. And hey, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be performed. And maybe just maybe, it'll be better than the original movie. I mean, isn't that the goal after all? That's gonna be it for me today. If you like this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you want to see more content from me. What's your favorite movie that's been turned into a musical? What movie would you like to see be adapted into a musical? Let me know in the comments down below. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/ConnorMcDowellLive. If you want to officially join this community and you want to get to know me a little better, you can join my Discord. The links for all of those will be in the description down below. I'm Connor McDowell, and I'm gonna go write that Haunted Mansion musical. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.